audio connection, but not a visual. And for the best WebEx experience, we suggest having a visual open on your computer. And we recommend closing out other browsers on your computer for the best possible connection. Lastly, for a great viewing experience, change your WebEx viewing screen to a grid view. So you can find this option in the top right corner of your screen. Also, be sure to engage with us on Twitter and LinkedIn using the hashtag BILivecast. And thank you to Cisco WebEx for being the official technology partner of Brand Innovators Virtual Summits and facilitating a great virtual event experience. We hope you're looking forward to today's live cast. And due to a last-minute conflict, the WPP and Unilever session has tentatively been rescheduled for Thursday, October 8th. However, today we are still going to be hearing from marketing leaders in the D&I space from Bulletproof and Eddie Bauer. We encourage you to engage with the speakers and ask questions during each session. I'll be back in between sessions to introduce our next group of speakers. I am now very excited to introduce your host for today. We are lucky to be joined by TJ Abrams. TJ is the head of global brand strategy and performance for Holiday Inn at Intercontinental Hotels Groups in Atlanta, Georgia. He is currently accountable for brand growth in 80 countries around the world on a brand that delivers over 25% of total revenue for the IHG portfolio. Outside of work, TJ dedicates his time to empowering and propelling the lives of youth leaders across the country through some of the most iconic programs in the US. He currently serves on the board of trustees for the Ron Clark Academy, Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project, and recently completed a 5-year term as co-chair for the Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation Alumni Advisory Board. Welcome to the stage, TJ.
Hi, Pearl. Thanks. I'm excited to be here with you all today.
Yeah, we're lucky to have you. You're perfect for this.
Great. Well, let's jump in. I'm excited to be here for our live cast session on diversity and inclusion. IHG, along with many of your companies that, for those of you watching today, has taken a step back the past few weeks to really reflect on our D&I journey and ensure we have the right actions to move forward in building a more inclusive culture. And that's what today's about. It's about learning from the best across our industry who are taking action and building more inclusive organizations and brands where they lead. This topic for many of your organizations is not always an easy one, but I'm really inspired by a few of the trailblazers we have today on our session. And the call to action for my congressional representative right here in Georgia, John Lewis, to be unafraid of getting into a little bit of trouble. So let's dig in. I'm first going to introduce you to our first speakers of the day. We are so excited to be joined by Martin Morse, the VP of Business Development for Bulletproof. This session will be moderated by Karel Cooper. Karel is the Senior Vice President of Global Marketing at Live Intent. He currently leads a marketing team and works closely with sales, product engineering, and customer success to create awareness and generate leads for key products and features. Welcome to the stage, Martin and Karel. Thanks for kicking us off today.
Thank you. Super excited to be here. Thanks for the great intro, and thanks again to Brand Innovators for putting this event together and giving us the platform to have these conversations. Martin, how you doing today?
Very well. Good morning on the West Coast. Good afternoon on the East Coast, wherever you're at.
All right. So Martin, listen, I want to spend this time talking with you about, partly your career journey, also challenges that you faced along the way and how race has played into that, right? And so the first question that I have for you, I think it would be great if you can give the folks here a sense of your background, your culture, and your identity.
Background and culture. Let's start there. And identity is very open for conversation and depth.
And I'm not talking about cookies.
Background. First and foremost, yes, I am a man of color. My father is African American. My mother is Croatian. So I kind of have this dichotomy of presence in moving through the world from a young kid to obviously now. Work background. Played professional basketball overseas for a short period of time. From there, went to Wall Street and was one of 5 minorities out of 890 members on the New York Mercantile Exchange, trading oil and gas. So out of those 5 minority members or persons of color, I was one of 2 that were a local market maker, which means we we didn't work for anybody except ourselves. So we didn't work for a bank, a brokerage, a physical producer. We literally made markets that made us our money or lost us our money. And then quickly moved out of, not quickly, after 12 years, just got fried, burnt out as a young guy. And still had all my relationships in entertainment and professional sports. And I kept getting calls all the time about just advisory and mentorship and direction and where do I go and how do I build a brand, and why is the guy in the locker next to me a smaller contract but he's got a bigger house and a nicer car and more endorsements and that kind of thing. So moved into the space of financial mentorship because that was the main issue. If you don't have a good foundation to build a brand, you're not going to be too successful in that. So fast forward, I opened up a financial mentorship firm that quickly went into financial management, which I didn't want to do. But then we opened up a sports and entertainment shop at an investment bank in New York City. Was there for 3 years before I took it out and went off on my own with my partners. And we quickly found ourselves developing brands alongside of our clients. So we were fortunate to have some pretty big name clients in the onset of our journey as an agency. And we found that we were still doing it kind of like the Wall Street way. This was, 10 years ago when it was pre-influencer marketing and social media wasn't as big as it was. And we were like, well, we don't really want money up front because the guys that we are branding and managing, they've got a lot of money. So let's talk about what their brand is going to do for your bottom line, right? So we'd rather take a back end and a smaller piece of the front end. So we started structuring deals like private equity deals. And we didn't know. We just thought that that's the way you do it, right? So, and then that found us moving into advisory and managing some of the campaigns because we really wanted to guard the IP and the brand clients as individuals, and keep it near and dear to I guess, lack of better term, control. How it shows up in the market. And we started making, advisory recommendations to different brands that we were placing these high profile personalities in, and it worked. And then from there, it was one of those things where it worked so well, we started getting requests and RFQs from corporations. And what it would be like if we sat in and helped develop marketing campaigns and really start taking the opportunity to have brands talk to different demographics and markets. Right. And I think this is where we're very clearly at right now, right? So how do brands communicate with demographics that are very specific, that have an opinion? These tribes are very networked. And from there, how do you make sure you're landing, right? And showing up in a genuine way and not just giving lip service, because it doesn't really take that much. It doesn't take a company that much effort to show up, but it does take a company a lot of effort to show up meaningfully. So how do you do that? And then from there, I got stolen away by the founder of Bulletproof, Dave Asprey, and I've been at Bulletproof now for technically 3 years as senior VP of brand strategy and biz development, and specifically focused on the media side of what we do and not the consumer packaged goods, the product side, but managing the 7 companies inside of that portfolio that are all connected in the health and wellness space. So
gotcha.
All of those brands show up. Yeah.
No, thank you for that intro and overview. Going back to something you said earlier, right? Your dad being African American, your mom being Croatian, right? And I'm curious to get your thoughts on how that intersectionality sort of played out in terms of your experiences along your career journey.
Yeah, sure. Great question. It's and I'll be blunt for everybody in that's listening in. I'm a New Yorker, right? So this is what you get. It was I was never black enough. I was never white enough. But from the outside looking in, folks don't know exactly what, you are, especially if you show up looking a certain way, and not understanding or not knowing or not feeling comfortable in asking or speaking or having that dialogue is enough to create a fissure, right? A gap or a crack where there's space in between how you interact with people. And it's not that it's a conscious bias. It's just creating space that doesn't connect people meaningfully. And I've been challenged with it in a good way and in a bad way, because I've actually had the opportunity to sit in boardrooms and in closed door conversations where people don't know that I'm a man of color or that my dad was black. And I've heard some really, really horrible things, but I've also heard some really honest things where it's like, folks just want to know better. And the sword cuts both ways, because it still happens in rooms that are filled with, people of color, where I'm not black enough to be in the room, quote unquote, right? But I think when you move into a space where you begin to close that gap and have discourse and conversation through that opportunity, then growth begins to exist, or at least starts to germinate. So I think for me, I've never looked at my existence as a challenge. I just exist. I'm here and I'm showing up and I'm putting my best foot forward. And if I happen to be a pretty dynamic brain in the room, awesome. If I happen to be the junior in the room, then you know what? I'm going to sit down and I'm going to listen and I'm going to absorb as much as I can. And it's worked out pretty well for me, I guess.
Yeah. How have you handled, or how do you handle situations today when you hear something that makes you uncomfortable or is offensive, right? And I'm asking that question because, given the current climate of what's going on, especially here in the US, right? A lot of people are asking that question. A lot of people are trying to understand how they can be better allies or how they can do certain things themselves, right?
Sure. I preach ad nauseum inside of our corporate four walls about EQ, right? So emotional intelligence in a situation there is an opportunity. If you're looking at it from the perspective of enhancing your EQ or elevating your EQ, you're looking at these as opportunities, no matter what. And yes, you could be very present to your emotions, your anger, your frustration, whatever it is that you're experiencing. But at the end of the day, if you can sit down and just say, well, I actually would like to understand that better. You begin to remove the offense, because you're not going to personalize it unless it's like a personal attack. And then that probably is a very different track that you're going to go down. But I'm not upset with ignorance. I'm really not. And this is just on a human level, and especially what we've been experiencing now in the last, 3 months with BLM and the movement and what's happening in our country with, on the politics side, and then how corporations are showing up as a result of that. I don't mind ignorance. Ignorance is an opportunity. You can sit down and talk, and ignorance is not a bad word. It's not dirty. And I think there's a misconception when it comes to saying, well, you're ignorant, or that was an ignorant statement, and sometimes it is, and that's okay. But we got to own it. You got to understand and grow from it, and then move forward. I don't find myself in positions as a leader where, if I'm taking it personally, it will most likely be not good for my team, for my responsibilities, what I'm accountable for, and then ultimately how we show up, and then how corporate culture is then disseminated through our channels.
Yeah, gotcha. And earlier you mentioned the idea of corporations showing up and being meaningful about it, right? Give me an example of what that means. What does showing up meaningful mean? Maybe an example, in your own sort of personal experience, or something great that you've seen out there from other companies.
I'll give you a great example, and I think everyone that's listening will obviously have seen this, but Ben and Jerry's stepped in and 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 made an unbelievable impact with the voice in which they have addressing BLM. And they waited. They didn't jump out into the stream of consciousness. They waited. They were very concise in their messaging, and you could feel the difference between where they stood and what collateral they were putting out, right? Because a lot of companies, what happens is it doesn't cost any equity to change a banner on an Instagram or a Twitter handle to a rainbow for LGBTQ. It doesn't cost a company any equity to put out a statement, but it does cost. The possibility of risk is greater when you actually go out and you create impact by taking a meaningful stand. And that is just always going to translate in messaging, right? It's like, why do some marketing campaigns carry more weight than others? It's just because there's either more heart and soul in it, and there's more there's more granular, tangible messaging to hold on to if you're a consumer, right? So that I think goes back to obviously corporate culture, but then standing in the space and serving the people in which you have a desire to serve. I think that's a huge thing for companies and brands right now. You know, not taking an artificial stand, but actually standing in the space and creating change and impact.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about that too is I do get the sense that some companies are a little scared to be too aggressive because they're worried about making a mistake, right? And I always feel that, you know, you can recover from a mistake as long as you're genuine about it. And I'd love to get your take on that.
Mistakes are fantastic. How do we grow? I mean, look at the transition that Pepsi has had over the last 10 years. It's been pretty phenomenal. And they've made mistakes, but if you restore your integrity, which we all have the ability to do, whether you're an individual or a behemoth Fortune 10 company, you can restore that integrity by owning and being accountable and saying, like, this is what we did. And I think consumers now, especially on the demographics that I've seen accelerating in a huge way, it's that, like, you know, 26 to 34-year-old demographic where it's like these folks have grown up with social media. They're very smart. They have time. They're savvy. They're savvy from a technology perspective. So there's not much that you can kind of like push past them. And those are the folks that I think, you know, from a corporate standpoint should be bet on. You know, they're growing super fast. They have money, disposable income. They're servicing their parents. They're creating families. So you basically have this 3-in-1 when you're approaching the market. And you know, there's something to be said about the art that goes with the science, right? Like, you know, as companies and corporations are so data hungry, and we always need data points, yes, but I don't think that we should lead with data points. You know, I always say this: you can't moneyball a championship, right? There's an X factor that exists because people are human, and markets are fluid, and markets are made up of personalities and psychology. So how do you, and that goes back to what I said, like some marketing campaigns just land, right? Because there's the art inside of that science where, yes, we've drilled down our demographics and our analytics, you know, we've ticked all the boxes on the equation side, but outside of the equation, where's the art? And that art is going to make someone feel something that I consider the X factor.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Love that answer. I'm going to move over now to some questions from the audience because they're starting to come in, which is great. So here's one. Love to get your take on this. Is how has your leadership style changed over the past few months?
I'll give you a very honest answer.
I wouldn't expect anything else besides an honest answer. So
I've gotten bolder.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
Bolder. But at the same time, I've also listened more.
Mm.
And I think even pre George Floyd, quarantine forced us all to be more patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we had no choice.
We had to sit down.
Sit down. But I will tell you, for us, with 7 companies inside of our portfolio, we were probably busier through that whole first 2 or 3 months of quarantine than we have been in the last 3 quarters. Just I mean, I think just across the board, from
Yeah.
supply chain all the way to board, line level all the way up to board. And what it did was it forced senior leadership to say, okay, everyone needs to stop. Like, just take a breath, take a beat, and let's start listening to what our team is communicating. Because, and even if they're not communicating, they're communicating through, interaction or lack of interaction. And if you just take time to listen a little bit more, we've had some amazing ideas and concepts come from, like, people we never expected it to come from. And then bolder in the aspect where it's just like, hey, we gotta take bold action.
Yeah.
We have to be swift with it, and we can't get caught up or have, paralysis by analysis.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Now, another question coming in from the audience. When it comes to communicating with your consumers, how do you think about brand purpose, and how does that impact your approach to marketing?
Brand purpose should always be your bedrock, like, period. One of the reasons I actually came into Bulletproof is because we saw from the outside looking in, the why was starting to get watered down. And if, as a health and wellness and company that stands for human performance, you gotta always be married to the why. And I think this is universal in every company at every size, whether you're a small startup or a small business in a small town, or whether you're a global behemoth. How
often do you sort of evaluate that why against the mission and values, and sort of just looking at it to make sure that you're continuously living up to it? Is that a regular process? No,
it's constant. If you don't inject that into the DNA of your culture, it will be watered down. It will be lost. And even working with agencies, right? Like, the agency side, if an agency does not understand that, then it's like, thanks, maybe we'll do work in the future, but no, the answer is no. And we don't want to be transactional. I find that a legacy brand is created when you want to take a legacy journey with the consumers in which you are addressing. And you cannot do that if you're just shoving the what in their face, like product, BOGO. Like, it doesn't create long-lasting legacy. It'll create a great balance sheet, for Q1 through 4, but what's the real mission and goal here?
Yeah, and speaking of long-lasting legacy, one of the things that concerns me the most, right, especially what's gone on in our country over the last couple months, is that as the emotion sort of dies down, so will the effort behind it, right? And I always say that this is a marathon, not a sprint. And to your point about sort of ingraining that into the DNA of the company, inclusive initiatives have to be a part of that. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on that as well.
Inclusive initiatives. So
let me rephrase that. Inclusivity has to be a part of what you do as an organization in order for it to stick. D&I can't be this thing off in the corner. Is what I'm trying to say.
And I'm very happy that you said this, because I think, and for personally, I've had a lot of conversations with CEOs, friends of mine from across the globe, and recognizing the I don't know, right? And I think there's
Mhm.
something really powerful in I don't know, and especially as a senior leader, it's like, so well, I don't know. What do we do? How do we continue to create critical mass and follow the inertia that the market is creating? And then how do we participate in that? Because let's
Mhm.
keep it real, like we're in business to make money. We're in
Right.
business to sell our widgets or our services or whatever. But I always,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with doing good by doing great. And that goes back to like the Ben and Jerry's. I would love to see what Ben and Jerry's balance sheet looks like over the last, quarter.
Mm.
Like how are they doing on the sales side? Because people just want to feel like people are being stood for and validated, and if you could do that as a brand, which in my opinion I think brands are the real influencers,
Right.
and I think that has been lost over the last 3 to 5 years with influencer marketing. It's like, oh, we want this influencer to validate us, when it's really the brand validating the influencer. So you must be very careful in how you create that culture and who you're tapping as a CMO or a strategist or an agency head that is creating these campaigns. And that's how I believe you can participate in that critical mass and growing that critical mass, like tapping the right people to carry your message, to carry your brand, to identify with your brand, and not have it just be organic because that influencer uses your product. But no, like how do they live their life? What are they doing in the street? How are they maintaining a voice? What are they doing in their lives, or even on the partnership side?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you, because I just, when I think about marketing, one of the things I always like to think about is, okay, let me put myself in the shoes of the consumer.
Yeah.
And now more than ever, yes, you want a quality product, but people are now buying products that are not only quality, but also go in parallel with their own sort of values that and beliefs that they have, right?
Yeah. Consciousness. It's
Yeah.
like, am I spending, and especially right now, there's a lot of money on the sidelines. Families are pinching pennies.
Hmm.
It's time to spend that dollar. Who am I going to spend that dollar on?
Yeah.
Company am I going to participate in life with? And I have a great friend of mine who he's the president at Shutterfly. He's no longer there, but he created a concept literally from birth to death, where you are with Shutterfly from the moment you are born through all of your moments in life, all the way until you finally are laid to rest. And
Mm.
and then, I mean, and it was like a radical concept 10 years ago. Like the board at Shutterfly, like their head exploded. And and that's kind of like where you want to be with people. You want to be
Right.
in the everyday of their life.
Yeah. Yeah. On you want to be with people on their
Yeah.
life journey, right? Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. Another question coming in. What's one piece of advice you would offer to brands who are only recently making DEI a priority? I think you kind of answered it a little bit, but
Um, that are only making, you can't make it, you
that
can't
are only recently making.
only reason. Okay.
Brand basically is just waking
Sure,
up
sure.
now and saying, yeah, okay, yeah,
Um, baby steps, right? But
yeah,
most importantly, it's a step.
right,
Honestly, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's like, where do you stand? It's like you got to be genuine in your stance. Like, what does it really mean to you? What does it really mean to your corporate culture and the community in which you serve? Like,
hmm,
how are you showing up? Not, well, let's hire diversity and inclusion, let's get our HR policies in place. Like, to me, that's all bullshit. It really is. That doesn't create change in a market. It doesn't create change in the culture of a corporate, for the four walls of corporate culture. It doesn't. I
right,
mean, little bit, but it's marginal. And where we're at now, we don't need marginal gains. We should be looking at significant changes to create paradigm switch and structure. Period. And if you're not thinking that way as a senior leader or an executive, you will be obsolete in the next 3 to 5 years because the market will dictate it. It's no longer servicing a minority group. It's the majority group.
Mm. You just started to answer this question, but let me ask it a different way. So we've got what, 6 months left in the year?
Yeah.
Wow, 2020, something
Man.
else.
Aliens in September.
6 months left in the year, 2021, right around the corner. I mean, what do you see in terms of trends, or make a couple predictions for the next, say, 6 to 9 months here?
Woo. The wild card is the election. It's a wild card. So if I had to make a prediction, it's be more specific. Make a prediction on what?
So going back to sort of brands being more authentic in the marketplace, diversity and inclusion initiatives, as we continue to move forward, right? You're seeing more and more companies do certain things, right? On one hand, on the other hand, you're seeing companies talk about it but not doing anything at all. I'm just curious to know if you think there is going to be sort of a leveling up across the board, if you will.
My desire is to see a level up.
Yep.
I am cautiously optimistic about how that is achieved. But
Yeah.
I believe there are enough executives, at least from my little pool, that I've had great conversation and great conversations with, where the I don't know is popping up a lot more. And when you have that I don't know, you fill that space with education, empathy, and learning. And so my prediction, I believe in the next 6 months, we're going to see a shift in corporate cultures from the top down. I do believe it, because the people are going to force that from the bottom up.
Yeah.
If you don't make those changes from the top down, you're not going to meet in the middle, and you're not going to have transaction. You're not going to have opportunity. You will, just because there's so much inertia in the market, and consolidation is happening with corporations, because you're seeing these these small cap companies get assumed from technology to CPG to, you name the vertical. But
Yeah.
I think what I believe is going to happen is that you're going to have a swath of corporate executives that are going to have a desire to sit in a symposium like the one in which we're having, to have a conversation, to learn, to ask questions in a safe space, in a container where I don't know or ignorance is welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be a renaissance of growth, and it'll be an inflection point. I believe it in the next 6 months, even the next 18 months. I believe there's, on the execution side of the market, I believe experiential is going to completely change in an amazing way, where you can't go to CES and be on a show floor with thousands of people, but you can have the opportunity to do something virtually that then piggybacks onto a physical experience in a really dynamic, cool way, because technology is allowing that, right? So you can show up in Los Angeles and be in a 20,000 square foot space where you're social distance, and you have that opportunity to participate in a physical experience and exchange, but kicked off from a virtual space, especially social media and that kind of thing. So I think there's going to be a lot of dynamic shifts, and then opportunities for corporations to market in that space, to transact in that space, and to develop new identities as a result, and shift culture.
The evolution of marketing will continue to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Martin, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate you sharing your experiences and insights. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Pleasure, man. Thanks, Karel.
All right. TJ, passing it back to you.
I think TJ's on mute.
Yep.
There we go. My
There
bad.
we go.
Awesome. Hey, that was phenomenal. Thank you both so much. Not only was that insightful, but real conversation and feedback for us. I was taking notes all over, but this idea of creating impact, which is what we all try to do by taking a meaningful stand, is one that really is sticking with me. So thanks you both for being with us today, and we're going to move to our next chat.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right, everyone. So we are now going to welcome our next fireside chat to the stage. We have Kristen Elliott joining us. Kristen is the VP of Marketing for Eddie Bauer. With over 18 years of marketing experience, Kristen has spent the bulk of her career in fashion retail, gaining expertise in public relations, communications, advertising, social media, digital media, and creative development. This session that we have coming up is going to be moderated by Brody O'Haran, and Brody is the Executive Vice President of Global Business Strategy of Goodway Group and Control V Exposed. At Microsoft for 13 years, he recently served as the Global Director of Agency Development. And with that said, we are going to try to bring them both to the stage. Welcome, Brody and Kristen.
Hey there.
Thanks so much.
All right, over to you.
Cool. Kristen, it's great to see you.
Brody, great to see you as well.
Of course. Well, why don't we quickly, TJ, that was a great intro. Appreciate that. And Kristen, maybe you can give a bit more about your background, and then I'll give a little bit of my background. We'll do that game, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks. So I am the VP of Marketing and Creative for Eddie Bauer. And I will correct one thing from the last intro, which was not fashion retail, but outdoor
Yes.
selling gear. And I've been here since 2006. So I've really had the benefit of seeing this brand through many stages of its evolution. And this is one that I'm most proud of. We have been amplifying the ways that people can engage with the outdoors and have outdoor experiences for the last 100 years. It's our 100-year anniversary this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, we're very excited about that. And, our DEI work is something that we've been at for a few years and that we're really proud of. So I'm excited to talk about it today.
Perfect. Well, excited to get to participate as well. So my name is Brody O'Haran. I'm part of the Goodway Group that is also CVE, Control versus Exposed, is our international entity. And we're digital marketing specialists, so we're working right along with brands just like yourselves, trying to figure out how do we maneuver, navigate. A lot of things changing, great opportunities to take a stand with our dollars. And we work as AOR to brands like you, all the way to specialist agencies who are just looking for help when it comes to digital. So, and also we're both Seattle natives, so I've grown up living with Eddie Bauer, wishing I was more outdoorsy and I could represent the brand better. And it's not lost on us that, look, we're having a conversation around diversity and inclusion, and both of us are white. And I thought a lot about that. And I think it's important that people who look like us are having this conversation, especially 100%. Me as a white male with privilege, you with your own privilege. So I don't have all the answers, but I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the conversation, continuing to learn, trying to figure out how to be a better ally. And I'm excited to learn from some of the work that you guys have done, because you guys took a stand early around Stop Pay for Profit, not just as a participant, but as a leader. And for me, because I've grown up in the shadow of Eddie Bauer, this is not news to me. You guys have always had a social compass and something to be admired. But you made a decision to stand behind this initiative and this cause. Can you walk us through what was your decision making? That's not something you come to lightly, and help us understand that.
Yeah, for sure. I want to take it back though for a second and just pause on the privilege conversation, because
Yes.
it's really, really important. And you're right, we both hold an immense amount of privilege. I'm white, I'm hetero, I'm cisgender, and I have a professional job. It is my responsibility to continually dismantle my internal systemic racism, and to be actively anti-racist. So, I have been doing a lot of things, educating myself, not relying on BIPOC, but educating myself, looking and seeing where my privilege comes into play that either I was aware of before or am more aware of now. Signing petitions, making phone calls. I did March here in Seattle, and yes, there was a risk with COVID, but it was really important to me to put feet to the ground and to be out there in that way, understanding that's not right for everybody. But then the work that we do at Eddie Bauer too comes into that. So I was actually wondering if you mind if I do a little land acknowledgement, since we're both here in Seattle, before we get started, and then I can jump into the Stop Hate.
Yes, do it.
So I'm going to read this because I want to make sure that I get it right. So I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past, present, and future, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe.
That's amazing. That's a really good reminder. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And that's actually, we'll get into this later, but that's actually one of the steps that we're taking at Eddie Bauer, is to add a land acknowledgement on our store locator page for each of our store locations and all of our corporate locations. It's a small act, but it's really important. So we'll get back to that later.
I think all of these add up, and you can't be an outdoor brand without recognizing the land that you're participating and enjoying and paying homage to that. So definitely appreciate that. And then, but looking in terms of, our audience in the world of marketing and what that means. And look, Facebook has such a big voice in all of this. Unfortunately, sometimes it's kind of goes down a negative path, and trying to figure out how do we control that. And so you guys took a stand back in July, and you guys are continuing to take a stand in August, because I know you guys have decided to still hold a little bit longer before you start shifting some of those dollars. So that wasn't a decision you guys took lightly. So helping us explain what went into that.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for that. So, first acknowledging that anybody who understands the apparel industry, the retail industry, knows that July isn't the largest shopping month. So to some, it could look like a really easy decision to stop spending. But it's part of the machine. And so it is a decision, and one we did not take lightly, but one we also came to agreement on really, really quickly. Because for us, a lot of people, a lot of organizations have tried to influence Facebook in the past, and Facebook doesn't really respond. The difference now, of course, is the groundswell of the largest civil rights movement that our country has seen. And it was really important for us to be not only in the mix, but at the front of the pack, in the hopes of influencing other brands to also take a stand, to add to the numbers, and to really have an effect this time. And we've gotten communication from Stop Hate about Facebook's response, and their response is okay-ish. But for us, this isn't a one and done thing. It's an ongoing effort. And whether or not in the future we decide to reinstate our spending, we've been talking with Stop Hate, and we know that this campaign will evolve, and we will be a part of the next step as well.
Yeah, well, look, it's got to start somewhere, and the fact that 1,000+ brands made that decision, I think, is pretty cool.
It's huge.
Has your conversations at all with Facebook changed? I know there's what they say publicly, but are you seeing the actions? Is there a desire to at least be in dialogue with you about how we can make change, or curious how that's evolved?
I mean, I would say that there's a desire, and there's more of a presence than there has been in the past. But the work isn't done, and we're going to continue it.
Got it. Yeah, it's tough. Look, it's hard to re-steer the Titanic, but you got to take actions, and at least we're spotting where we need to go.
It is. And I would just say too that, we're not the biggest brand on that list, and we definitely don't have the biggest media spend on the list, but it's the power of the collective that is going to make a difference. So I would encourage others as well to stay the course and to stand with us.
No, I think that's great. You guys have made the decision, at least through August, to put your money where your mouth is. As you've shifted, has there been any key learnings? I mean, bringing it kind of to a practical sense, you guys have shifted onto other social platforms and probably changed your media mix. Like anything interesting that you're like, wow, that was great, or boy, sure did make my job tough, but we're getting through it.
No, I would say, we've been afforded the opportunity through this to test and learn a few things that we might not have taken the risk on before. We're already really well positioned in this COVID timeframe because of the way that we inspire people to have outdoor adventures that they want to have. We're very much about self-prescribing those adventures, right? So we're going to show you a lot of ways that we adventure, but really inspire you to have adventures that you want to have and prepare you with the gear and all of that. And obviously that really works right now. Outside is one place we can kind of all be together. And it's really appealing to younger generations. So when we talk about channels like Snapchat or TikTok, which may also be
we'll see what happens there.
I think that there's opportunity there for us to reach new audiences in a really authentic way. And if you were here for the last fireside chat, then you know that authenticity is the way forward on this path.
That's right. Yeah, it's not just you can't just fake it. It's got to be who you are and what you're going to become. And speaking of what Eddie Bauer is evolving into, the conversations that have been opening up and a new lens on, just like we talked about, white privilege. Like have I thought about it as much as I should have in prior years? No. Have I now looked back and decided, wow, I'm going to make a change? Like I'm looking in the mirror in a way that I hadn't. And we're doing that as corporations as well. So as Eddie Bauer's looked into the mirror, how do you think you come out of this, a year from now when we come back and check in with you and say, hey, we've had this great 12 months or 24 months. How do you think this is going to change how Eddie Bauer does business, engages with the community, your outdoor kind of trying to re-envision what that could look like? How does that change now?
Yeah. Well, this isn't also, you alluded to this earlier, but this isn't new work for us. Now, when we talk about the 400 plus years of systemic racism, okay, so it is kind of new for us, but we've been down a path for the last few years that's rooted in the authenticity of our brand. So maybe I'll just take it back a little bit to educate folks, because there's a third white person in this conversation who is Eddie Bauer. So
that's true.
He was a real person here in Seattle, and his passion was making sure that people could have outdoor adventures that they wanted to have. He knew where to go. He knew how to get out there. He knew what you should wear. And then he also was really ahead of his time because he would bring people back to his shop in downtown Seattle and share in community about those outdoor experiences. And those are tenets that we've taken forward. So we build our technical product with a team of guides, of working guides, whose job it is to get folks outside. And they help inspire as well through showing us their adventures. So a few years ago, we were thinking about how do we evolve this idea of guide to be able to make the outdoors more accessible and welcoming. And just a sidebar, I think that's a concept, as I've seen conversations happening in the outdoor sphere, that's really a little bit hard for some folks to understand, that the outdoors aren't actually welcoming to all. But it's something that we're really passionate about, making sure that we do our part to ensure that they are. So we started a program called All Outside that's really differentiated from others in the market, in that we bring folks onto our team through long-term contracts. They receive a salary and they help us change the organization from the inside out. And these are folks that are actively creating welcoming spaces in the outdoors for marginalized groups. So this year we're going to double that program. And these folks are helping change the way we build product, the way we market, the way consumers see themselves within the brand, the way that our store associates and customer service and internal folks are educated about and can tackle these topics.
Wow. I mean, you've got the social change that's happening, and then you put COVID on top of it, and this like rush to be outdoors and to be like outside of my four walls, and the fact that for some people it's not as welcoming as it should be. The fact that you guys are taking some actions there. In a space you guys authentically own. Like, you can't be Eddie Bauer and not be outdoors.
Right.
As you've gone through this, I'm curious about what this has meant for you personally. And so we've got a couple of questions that have been coming through, and along the same line that I want to ask is, how has your leadership style changed? How are you looking at your team? Do you look across and think about changes that you're going to make? Do you have the diversity that you aspire to, have? And how are you changing how you think about leadership and where you go from here personally?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different ways to answer that. And maybe first, I'll double back to some of the other things that Eddie Bauer is doing, because it's definitely been a part of our leadership evolution this year, making sure that we can empower and provide those outdoor experiences for anyone that wants to have them. So one of the things that we did was signed the Outdoor Industry CEO Diversity Pledge that actually holds us to standards that we report back on a bi-yearly and yearly basis. We are coordinating efforts, or trying to, with the Outdoor Industry Association. We'd love to take a brand agnostic look at the industry and how we can help change things from the inside out. We're hiring, speaking of leadership, a DEI resource at our parent company HR level to ensure hiring practices, promotion practices are sound. And, that's something we probably should have had in place a long time ago. But again, if you listen to the last fireside, it's about baby steps, and some of the steps we're taking are those right now. And then I think a big one is we want to make sure that everyone can see themselves in our brand. So taking a hard look, speaking of my own leadership, at our marketing, at our creative, our video assets, our photo assets, the influencers that we work with. Influencer marketing is still a big part of what we do. Celebrities and folks that we bring on to that larger guide team that I mentioned earlier. And then within COVID itself, some things I've noticed are, suddenly there's a lot more humanity in this corporate culture. I'm looking into a room in your home right now. You're in my home right now. Pets and kids are popping in, and you're seeing people live their lives. And there's something really beautiful about that. I think for us, there's a connectivity that actually has empowered all of these hard conversations to happen in a really more meaningful way that has allowed us to take action faster.
No, I think that's a good observation. And Goodway, we're a virtual company, so we're 350 people. We're spread out all over the place. So it's like everybody jumped on our party. And, I've got the sportscaster button up, workout shorts on. But one of the things that's been great is that you and I, for instance, getting to have this conversation is one thing within your company, but to extend that kind of humanity outside of it so that we can enter into a different type of discourse. The question is, are we going to choose to have it around topics that are meaningful, like this?
We have to.
We have to, absolutely. And I'm curious for you, so there's leadership style, but also there's lots of brands that aren't as far as you guys are. I think one of the things is, look, you learn something about yourself as an organization. You either change it or you don't. Like maybe you're late to the game. I get it, but you're in the game, so let's do something. So do you have any advice for other brands that maybe aren't as far along as you, whether that's on how they should be showing up, socially, or whether that's, how they think about diversity and inclusion? You guys have made some smart kind of additions to your leadership team and others. What advice do you have?
Yeah, first, I think that it's never too late, right? This is an ongoing process, and starting today or starting tomorrow is great. But you've got to take a step, and you've got to have top-down leadership and support for all the work that needs to be done, and you have to be committed for the way that comes through. So if companies think about their consumers and the types of consumers that can see themselves in that company or in that brand, you kind of start with that foundation and then build in all the things that are missing. You do a lot of education. You employ experts to come in and teach, and you're an active participant and listener. Those are great places to start.
Yeah, one of the things you guys have done, I love your Be the Change. So for those of you guys who haven't seen it, eddiebauer.com/be the change. There's a lot of companies that are out talking about the wonderful things that they're doing. Like, well, let's get past just the talk. Let's do some action. And so, if you are curious, a lot of things that you've called out here are actually listed there. You also have a call to action in terms of how you're going to be listening to your consumers and whatnot.
Yes.
How has that shifted? As a brand who's trying to make the outdoors more accessible, that's trying to, be more inclusive. Your customers are having a dialogue with you. Like, what's that looking like over the last few months?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Two different things on that front. One, we also started an internal committee that's anonymous so that people can provide suggestions and feedback that we can learn from and grow. That's been super helpful. A lot of good ideas have come forward that we're rolling with in the next weeks and months. And then on the consumer side, I personally, when we put out our Black Lives Matter statement, myself, along with a handful of others, personally manned our social channels and communicated with consumers as we did that. There was a lot of unpleasantness. And then there was also a lot of really great conversation that came of it. People that used the opportunity to engage with us to educate themselves. Things they didn't know, like, guess what? The outdoors aren't welcoming to everyone. Not everyone feels comfortable on the trail or the river. And so it's allowed us to have a dialogue about how we can make that so all together.
So if somebody is listening, if they also have a passion for the outdoors, obviously, associating themselves with Eddie Bauer is great, but are there specific things that they could be doing? Are there organizations? Are there places that they could focus that energy? Because being in Seattle, it's a big outdoor community. To be honest with you, I've only probably thought about my own experience in that. I don't think up until you mentioned it, sadly, I don't think I've really thought about what it means for, participating in the outdoors the way I do. That it's tough. Like, what organizations are out there that we can focus on to maybe make a change?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. I mean, one really easy thing people could do is actually to come to the Eddie Bauer Instagram and look at all the folks that we follow. So there's a multitude of organizations, Venture Outside, Color Outside, a handful of, like Unlikely Hikers. There's hundreds and hundreds of organizations who will show you what it's like to get out and adventure as part of many different kinds of groups and people. And I would say just even digesting content and seeing the ways that other people engage with the outdoors is a great way to get started.
Oh, that's great. And we're going to open up in a few minutes to questions from the audience. So get ready. Kristen is going to be ready to wow you with her answers.
I'm ready.
You're ready. Well, I'm curious too, internally, for instance, we had a group of people that started an ally group within Goodway, and recognizing, look, calling up your friends of color and whatnot and saying, hey, teach me. Like, that's just BS. Like, they're trying to work through this on their own. And so there's a level that I need to bring to it. And so I've really appreciated this safe space that we've created to have those conversations. And some things I've enjoyed when I'm learning, it's causing me to go down rabbit holes to learn more.
Yeah.
Other places, it's been like, ooh, that mirror shine in a place that maybe I wasn't ready for, but I got other people I can talk to. So I'm curious, your culture as a company, there's the corporate-led stuff, but is there anything that like gives you, makes you feel good about being at Eddie Bauer because your employees are taking action?
Absolutely. I mean, one thing is, of course, the internal committee that we have, and just understand, I'm not a part of the committee, but understanding the dialogue that's being had through that committee, and the number of people that jumped on board right away to participate in it. The other is, I can say personally, for our own marketing and creative team, and I know this is present on almost every other team as well, is we have formed groups where we're, reading and discussing things like mean white supremacy, white fragility. Many of us have signed up for the same, Patreon-based email resources like the Anti-Racist Daily. which are great resources to educate ourselves and not rely on BIPOC. We must not do that, you know?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of different ways. And if you don't have a group right now that you're a part of in your own organization, then start one. See who might want to participate in doing Me and White Supremacy or reading another book and just sharing thoughts and opinions or thoughts and, you know, reactions back and forth.
Yeah. It's, I know it's changed how I look at the world. I was out with a group of friends, socially distanced, having some beers, and the conversations that we're having now versus what we had 6 months ago, like actually talking about white privilege and hearing across the spectrum of responses. And I don't know, it's been very cool and sad to go through it at the same time. I'm glad we're having the conversations. I'm glad there's people like you, Kristen, in an important position, leading the marketing team for a really great brand that's taking action. So can't thank you guys enough for the work that you're doing. And I want to give an opportunity to the audience who's been listening in. Are there any questions from all of you that are top of mind for you? TJ, I don't know if there's, want to jump back on or. Oh, all right. He said he sent them. So we already got through those ones. So if there's any other new ones, feel free to jump in. Well, I guess, Kristen, anything else on your mind that as you prep for this, you're like, hey, I wish you would have asked me this thing because it's really important and you're not getting to the question that matters?
Well, you've hit most of them, but I will say, as I mentioned earlier, that we are celebrating our 100-year anniversary this year. And one of the ways that we are still able to do that in this COVID timeframe is that we actually have a global holiday that we've established. It's this Saturday, 8/8. It's Global Sleep Under the Stars Night. And the whole purpose is simply to all be outside sleeping under the stars on the same night. So you can do that on your fire escape in New York City. You can do that in a national park. You could do it in your backyard. But the idea is just to be under the same stars on the same night. So I encourage you to participate.
On 8/8, huh? All right.
Saturday. You don't have any plans? It's COVID.
I know. It's like, okay, I can do that. And actually, because we're not abusing our world as much, I might even see some stars here in the
Exactly.
So that'll be nice. We're actually 91 years old. So we're gearing for our 100 years in 9 years. And so I don't know if we'll be sleeping under the stars, what we'll be doing. But, you know, it also puts into perspective what we're talking through when you're a company that's been around. Like you think about over the last 100 years and how it's changed, and especially where you start from Eddie Bauer, you know, the person to what it is now. It's pretty cool. So I'd be interested to have another conversation around what are you going to learn in the next 100 years. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have a distance beer.
A distance beer. Yes. I've had plenty of distance beers. I can't wait for the in-person beers that we're going to be having here shortly. Well, I can't thank you enough. Yep.
Hey, it looks like we got one more question that came in if you want to
miss it. Okay. Oh, here we go. Yes. Okay. Have you been looking closer at how brands you support have responded to the BLM movement and adjusted your support of brands accordingly?
Yeah, so we largely, we have a small number of brands that we partner with, and we're very choosy about that outside of this whole conversation anyway. It's something that's always top of mind for us. But for instance, we have a number of brands that we license with, and we've been really focused on making sure that our licensing agreements are even tighter with our, you know, participation rules and regulations around the way that they represent themselves to make sure that they are actively anti-racist, et cetera. So there are some improvements that we've definitely made that have come out of this process that have been really powerful.
So there's been maybe some brands you've walked away from. You don't have to name them.
No, it wasn't really about walking away. It was more about going back to our agreements and making sure that they were up to our own standards as they exist today, and then pushing those through to our partners. And certainly if partners don't want to participate with that, maybe there's a conversation, but we haven't run into that yet.
Got it. Got it. Well, that's good to know. Well, Are we? I think we're pretty good, unless there's a question that I missed because I didn't read the Q&A close enough.
I don't see anything else on, but I did, Kristen. I was really inspired to hear you talk a little bit about Be the Change. Is there anything more on Be the Change that you would just encourage folks who are interested in learning more about Eddie Bauer that we should go and sort of check out specifically and look for?
Yeah, I would say that we are going to be actively updating that all the time. So, check back every so often and we'll have new actions that we can communicate.
Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much, Kristen and Brody. This was a fantastic conversation, and we appreciate having you both on our live cast today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's really
Appreciate it. See you under the stars on 8/8, Kristen.
Sleep outside with us.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Look, we've had a fantastic almost hour and a half with great discussions from all of our panelists, and I took away a number of good thoughts. Be open and have the dialogue. Love seeing what Eddie Bauer is doing to make sure they're having a conversation internally. Martin and Karel talked earlier about showing up meaningfully, and now more than ever, the importance of it mattering how we show up in a meaningful way. And then Martin really inspired us with how he's being more bold, right? And I think today's business environment will require all of us as leaders to be more bold in certain situations and honest to really lead our organizations forward. So we really want to thank everyone for joining us for today's live cast. Please join Brand Innovators tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a special live cast on direct-to-consumer marketing. We'll be joined by marketing leaders from CoverFX Skincare, Smile Direct, Koya, and more. So thanks everyone for joining, and we hope to see you again soon.